I think two presentations have been made, and we still have two more who will put forth their viewpoint. And I would like to invite those two. I hope they are ready, the two groups. But before that, there are a few announcements that I want to make. One, I've been getting a few mails. I would like to mention Dr. Mehto's mail. He seems a little perturbed about the fact that he's not a member of any group. So, if it is possible for the two groups to take him in, I think that will be good, or at least let us just try that in future. Whenever the groups are formed, we should have him also as a member. And Dr. Mehto, I would also suggest that when the groups are being formed, right at that point itself, if you pitch in and if you make it very clear that you want to be a member of A group or B group, I think it's much better at that point rather than, when the group has been completely formed. But I do hope that you are a member of the WhatsApp group, because I think that's where it all starts. So I would just request that be a little alert at the beginning itself. And I'm sure that if you stake a claim or if you express a desire to be a member of A group, I think you will be
Some audio problem?
member of the group.
Some audio problem. Are you all able to hear, ma'am?
She left the meeting. She'll come back. I think
Okay.
audio problem.
Okay.
So, which groups are presenting today?
It has to be group 2 and group 4.
Hmm.
Group 2 presenting.
Okay.
NB sir, where did you share your presentation?
Yeah, we did not find it.
We did not get it, sir.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can I send it once again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do that.
Manager. You're on mute, ma'am.
These are the problems with technology. When we say that, we should go online and technology is so reliable, it's going to change the way we look at education. I think we need to keep in mind, sitting in Delhi, right in Delhi, this is happening so often now. So anyway, let's get back to where we started. There are two groups which are going to make presentations. I would want somebody to moderate. Who will moderate? Please volunteer so that we can start. And I hope the other two groups are ready also. The rest of you who are not going to make any presentation should be actually ready with your questions on the presentations, because let's have a good debate on this. All right. Who will moderate?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, Fauzia.
Ma'am, I'll moderate for my group. I'm from group 2, so I'll just start.
All right.
Is it okay with you, ma'am?
Yeah, absolutely. Just go ahead and do that.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. Myself, just wait a minute. Ma'am, can everyone see my screen?
No, Fauzia, we can't see this.
Yeah, just a minute. Yes, now can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Hello everyone. Myself, Miss Fauzia, on behalf of my group, would like to introduce to our topic quality assessment, benchmark, and criteria in higher education. Following are the subtopics which we will be covering today. Meaning of quality assessment and importance. What is benchmarking? Benchmarking and quality assessment in higher education. Role and benefits of benchmark in higher education, strategy of quality assessment in higher education from Indian context, critical view of benchmark in higher education, and criteria of benchmarking in higher education. So these are the group members which will be presenting today with me. Pavitra, Seema, Himani, Gayatri, Shagufta, and myself, Fauzia. So, for the further continuation of the presentation, I would like to Miss Pavitra to take over and continue further.
Hello? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Pavitra.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am,
I'm
you are
going to start.
audible. You can speak.
Yeah, good morning to all. So I'm going to say about quality assessment. Quality assessment is a data collection and analysis which is for the degree of conformity. Hello?
Yes, good.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear
I'm
you.
not able to
You
see
can
my
proceed
screen
further.
properly. Can you able to see the screen properly?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So quality assessment is a data collection and analysis is used for the degree of conformity to a standard and criteria which is used. So if the quality found to be unsatisfactory, attempts are made to discover the reason for this. Next slide. What is quality assessment in education? So assessment is an ongoing process for setting standards of higher education and measuring the progress towards learning outcomes. It plays an important role in the teaching learning process at all levels of education. Such assessment plays an important and significant part in the future of students. Hence, assessment determines the way in which we teach, what methodologies we use, and what innovations we have introduced in teaching methodologies. Next, types of assessment is summative assessment. It's called as the end of the assessment, state assessment, aligned to content area state standards, measures students' adequate yearly progress, and a component of teaching accountability and evaluation. Next is interim assessment. It's called as 6 to 8 week assessment, school and district level assessment, identify gaps in student learning, predict students' performance on state tests, and data used at classroom level, derive district level the decisions. Next is formative assessment. It is said as it is used linked with learning experience, assess student understanding and monitoring of skills data used to modify instructions. Next, quality assessment and is important in higher education. Quality is one of the values of
Can I
modern
just stop
higher
you?
education.
Pavitra, please, can I just stop you? I think
Yeah.
read the question Anil has put in the chat box. We have to be clear about which assessment are we talking about. Will you just
Okay,
answer his
ma'am.
question? Because I also feel there is some confusion out here in the presentation.
Okay. What is the problem, ma'am? I'm explaining about the meaning of assessment, types of assessment. Now I'm going to explain about ma'am. Can I proceed? Hello? Am I audible?
feel that
Hello.
is this presentation going to lead to assessment of quality? Because we're
Yeah,
talking
ma'am.
about okay, all right, okay, we'll wait and see.
Quality assessment in higher education, ma'am.
Well, the the process actually of assessing, I mean,
Qual-
how does the assessment of quality take place? That is where you have to reach. So if you
yeah, ma'am.
factor
Quality assessment
in
in
your
higher education, ma'am.
the presentation is talking about that, please proceed.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Next slide, Fausia. Are you there? Next slide. Assessment
Yes,
cycle.
yes.
So, how to assess the cycle? First one is to plan and identify the outcomes. Next is to collect the required data for your assessment. Next is to analyze the data. All these plans are very easy to proceed. Now, next comes to share the data share which you have collected to your group members or to a higher officials. This is other point. Next is to identify and implement if any changes have been done. So next procedure is the last thing is to assess what all you have collected, you are shared and identified. You are going to assess the impact for the changes to implement the changes now. So this is the hardest point in the field of the assessment. Next, next slide is quality assessment and its importance in higher education. So quality is one of the core values of modern higher education. Quality assessment design plays a vital role in education process. At the present time, higher education quality assessment is an important objective for universities since the quality of the education services which they offer to a significant degree is predetermines their ability to function and develop normally. Next slide. Next slide. It also determines the explain all this. Yeah, it also determines the effect of teaching and support provided by all categories of stakeholders. Stakeholders mean state, academic, business communities, students, etc., as well as a series of non-tangible benefits. So, a well-designed and well-communicated assessment task sets a clear expectations for the students. The task should be like to monitor the students, to behave, practice, and to motivate them as to give feedback for the sessions and all that. Okay, I now hand over to Miss Seema. Seema, ma'am, are you there
Yes,
for benchmarking?
thank you, Pavitra.
You can continue.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to discuss about the introduction of benchmarks in quality assessment. Firstly, I explain the meaning of benchmarking. This is one of the tools for quality assessment and also cope with competitive market. Many writers have defined benchmarking in different ways. I will be talking two of them. Jared once said benchmarking is the continuous action of comparing a process, a product, or a service with a similar activity, known as being the best in that field. The purpose of establishing ambitious but real improvement objectives and actions, so as to become and keep the number one position among the best within the period of time. In Robert's vision, benchmarking is the continuous assessment process of our product, service, and method in comparison to those of our most serious competitors or of an enterprise recognized as being the leader in their field. Next, please. Next slide, please. Benchmarking is not just about gathering data, it involves adapting new approach of continuity questioning how processes are performed, seeking out best practice, and implementing new model of operation. It has been described as a method of teaching institutions how to improve for the betterment of educational process and student learning. Next slide. Benchmark assessment delivers strong message to students, teachers, and parents about what knowledge and skills are important to learn. This assessment often serves four interrelated but distinct purposes. First purpose is communicate explanation of learning. It shows students what knowledge is valued and how learning will be measured. Students can demonstrate their achievement through multiple assessments, including self-assessment, exhibitions, and specific performance assessment. Next. Okay. These previous shows in. Second purpose is plan conclusion. This one is third.
One.
Yes. Second purpose is plan curriculum and instruction. Benchmark assessment can serve curriculum and instructional planning purpose. To meet students' learning needs, to do so, benchmark assessment must be aligned with content standards and major learning goals and provide reliable information on students' strengths and weakness related to those goals. Third point is monitor and evaluate instructional program or effectiveness. This assessment can also be for monitoring and evaluation purpose by providing information to teachers, school or district about how will programs, curriculum or other resources are helping students achieve learning goals. Yeah, predict future performance is third purpose. Fourth purpose is predict future performance assessment can provide data to see that classes, schools, and districts are on course to meet specific years and goals or commonly be classified as proficient on the end of year state test. Benchmarks helps the student to keep on track for success and can ultimately raise the standard of education. Now I would like to invite Ms. Fozia to continue presentation. Thank you.
So, benchmarking in education occurs when measurable standards are set for learning. For example, benchmarks might be set for the concepts that must be mastered in each grade. They might also be used to see whether particular students, class, or even school ranks in comparison to others. So, benchmarking is more than just gathering data, it involves adapting a new approach of continually questioning how processes are performed. So, increasing competitions, demands for accountability, and higher volumes of available information are changing the methods of how institutions of higher education operate in nowadays. So, therefore, it's important to bring a new way of thinking or paradigm that's built efficiency and a desire for continual learning, which must be integrated into institutional structures. So, tools are also being developed that measure or benchmark the progress and success of these efforts. So, among the improvement strategies and techniques, benchmarking has emerged as a useful, easily understood, and effective tool for staying competitive. So, benchmarking, this breakthrough improvement helps because it's a continue improvement plan, a set of activities designed to bring gradual, ongoing improvement to products, services, or processes through constant review, measurement, and action. It requires examining leadership, resource allocation, teaching and learning, and student engagement, and helps university leaders shift the focus from outcomes to multiple factors that contribute to them. Benchmarking is basically learning from others. Why we should do benchmarking? Benchmarking is everywhere in education now. We benchmark students in relation to standards, educational performances of our own country against higher scoring competitors. As from survey, it says benchmarking in education should be about discovering where we stand and learning about who we are and what we do by observing those around us. So that's why all these questions arises. Benefits of benchmarking in higher education. It revitalizes both teaching and assessment, creates a curriculum of high academic standards, acts as a great instructional aid. It motivates students, helps in monitoring students' yearly progress, provides alternatives to standardized tests, helps in improvisation, helps in creative thinking, innovation with management methods, coping with competitions, helps in keeping pace with the changing technology, helps in meeting quality standards, helps in goals setting, helps in improvisation of total quality management. Now, I would like to hand over to continue with the presentation to Ms. Himani.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Now I'm going to present strategies to improve the quality of Indian higher education. First of all, I would like to define the definition of strategy. Strategy is a general plan to achieve a one or more long-term or overall goals under condition of uncertainty. A strategy refers to the rules that a player use to choosing between the available action options. A method or a plan chosen to bring about the desired future, such as achievement of a goal or solution to a problem. Next slide, please. Fazima.
Yes, I have already changed.
Demand for higher education has increased dramatically in the recent year of India, as it has. Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Demand for higher education has increased dramatically in recent year of India, as it has in other countries across the newly industrialized world. Globally, enrollment has been increased more than 50% in the past decade, and now exceed 150 million worldwide, with more than half of the students coming from the emerging market countries because of their spurt number of enrollments. There is a growing interest to improve quality and access of higher education in India. Next slide, please. Some strategies to can improve the quality of Indian higher education. First, instead of wait. Instead of dogmatic, transform the curriculum into something dynamic. The syllabus curriculum for Indian students in higher education is obsolete in majority of cases. The topics are dogmatic and stale, and try to teach things that is already has been implemented worldwide. For influencing dynamic, the curriculum needs to be progressive. The spirit of the syllabus should be revolved around the project and not exams. There needs to be innovation of avoid complementing with innovative ideas, such as 50% of exams and 50% for projects. The projects need to be judged by independent faculty members rather than faculty in the place. For this take of shape, we need young dramatic faculty members who can part of a academic syllabus board. Second one, give teachers due by paying them more. The academic board is predominantly chaired by teachers in their 60s, 70s era. We don't want to offensive to these students, these teachers, but there is a need to for younger lecturers and professors for the healthy blend of young and experience for education system. The young teacher would be the better position in related to technological changes in the new age requirements of the students opting a higher education. Another factor that needs to be considered is that teachers in India are paid peanuts in the comparison with the other professions. Students who have graduated earn much more than the comparison with the assistant professor and lecturer as compared to colleges. With an increasing payment, the quality of teachers will definitely improve. Third one, please change the slide, ma'am. Pause, ma'am.
Yes, I have
Thank you.
changed, ma'am.
Industry interaction should be placement obligation. One of the predominant pillars in growing the education is the level of interaction between students and industry. Leading companies should be invited for the such interaction. When corporate arts approaches colleges for placement, there should be a minimum qualification criteria for the student to be eligible for the placement. For instance, students should be their worth by contributing to the placement. rest of the companies would be follow suit because of them. Human resources are at most significant. This strategy would make the institute optimize the human potential and enhance the industry interaction manifold. Ultimately, the investment would improve the students' learning experience. Fourth one is use the influence and fame of alumni. Among the many underrated potentials in the educational system of India is the power of influencing the alumni. In times where all Indian graduates are earning somewhere, alumni networks need to be well intertwined with the progressive of the universities. Alumni do not shy away from giving. However, they are confronted with two problems: the lack of knowledge of who to give. They are concerned whether the money would be end up. After establishing of transparent and credible network, alumni would be more confident and contributed money or experience with the opening of new avenues. Now I would like to continue. I would like to hand over to Gayatri ma'am. Gayatri ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning to all. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
This ma'am.
Yes. Yes. I'm going to continue. That is the critical view of benchmarking in higher education. Let's see about the benchmarking. The benchmarking we know, and we already discussed about the benchmarking, the definitions. It is a diagnostic instrument and it is a self-improvement tool, and it is a voluntary process of self-evaluation and self-improvement through the systematic and collaborative comparison of practice and performance with similar organization. So nowadays, India currently is at a stage in its development cycle where it focuses on education for all, and it's leading to general neglect of post-primary learning, particularly higher education in the country education strategies. So policymakers seem to be working on the assumption that higher elementary and secondary education literacy rates are crucial drivers of inclusive growth and development. The correlation between higher education and development seems to have got ignored in our country's growth agenda. So, in the absence of direction, higher education in India is riddled with many critical impediments like management and administration of higher education, pedagogy of higher education, role of ICTs in shaping the existing system, autonomy, accountability, and accreditation. So, according to Professor Sarah L. Colley, University of Virginia, proposed the following basic steps to implement a benchmarking strategy in a higher education institutions for all over the world. That is, the step one is what to benchmark. What to benchmark means here identify the critical processes of collection of internal data for comparison of within the institution or the outside the institutions. Then how to measure the performance and understand the strategies and weaknesses of current process of education. Then step 2 is who to benchmark. Here, under the who to benchmark, the internal units and comparison within the institutions, other colleges and universities, and functional comparison, that is across diverse settings, higher education, corporation, industry, etc. Then step 3 is collect data. Here that is the collection of data through quantitative and qualitative data through calls, surveys, site visits, interviews, review through websites. Then step 4, analyze the data. So here the data are analyzed between the performances. Are others better? Why are they better? New strategies and practices for adoption. What practices could be adapt or adoption, like that. Then step 5 is implement the improvements. That is action plan for change and implement the changes and to measure the result for the same effectiveness. Then according to International Benchmarking in Higher Education 2011 report, benchmarking states that benchmarking strategies basically aim to achieve the following objectives. That is to enhance the quality of education, to enhance the quality of research, to prepare the students effectively for life, work in an intercultural and a globalizing world, to enhance the international reputation, visibility of the unit, to provide service to society, community, and social engagement. So based on this international benchmarking report, each of these criteria, currently 9 action dimensions are available. So the report identifies 8 different categories, implementation categories. That is, category 1 is for students and students' facilities. Second one is staff and staff achievements, staff facilities. Third one is administrative setups. Category 4 is funding and financing of the institutions. Then category 5 is curricula and academic services. Category 6 is research and its field. Then category 7 is the promotion and the marketing of the same institution. Then category 8 is non-academic services and campus and community life. Now I am over to Shagufta. Thank you.
Yes, hello, ma'am. Fauzia, ma'am, can you put the next slide?
Yes, ma'am. I've already changed.
Yeah, okay. So I'll be talking about the criteria of quality assessment in higher education. Like, no single assessment can evaluate the all kinds of learning we value for students or meet all the goals held with the parents in a coordinated system of assessment. Different tools should be used for, different purposes, like already Pavitra has explained, like, formative, summative, diagnosis, and a large scale reportings. So, however, all the assessment should faithfully represent the standards and model good teaching and learning practices. So, we urge the systems be evaluated by some of the 5 criteria, like, next slide, ma'am. Fauzia, ma'am. Yeah.
Yes.
So, in these 5 criteria, I'll be explaining. The number 1 is assessment of higher order cognitive skill assessments. So, like, new assessment should tap the high level cognitive skills that allows the students to transfer the learning to a new situations and problems. Yeah, how a large majority of the items and the task, depth of knowledge levels 2 to 3, 4, based on the taxonomy, it can be evaluated. Number 2 is high fidelity assessment of critical abilities. In this, the assessment should be evaluate the critical abilities articulated in the standards such as communication skills mainly, that is speaking, reading, writing, and listening in multimedia forms like collaborations, modeling, complex problem solving, research, experimentation, and its evaluation. By this method, this can assess it as a criteria for evaluations. Then number 3, standards that are internationally benchmarked. As Gayatri ma'am has said so many points about the benchmark, our criteria, we have to set a criteria which should have a high standards, international standards. So assessment should be of a righteous and those for the leading education countries in terms of the kinds of assessment they present, as well as the level of performance they expect. So it should reach the international level standards. Then number 4, use of items that are instructionally sensitive and educationally valuable. Means an assessment task should also represent the curriculum content in a way that responds to instruction and have value for guiding and informing teachers. Instructional sensitive items are designed so that the underlying concepts can be taught and learned rather than reflecting students' differential access to outside of school experiences. In many countries, the use of assessment for learning is an important goal. Performance-based assessment are designed to offer good models for teaching and learning and insights into how students think as well as what they know. So assessment that provide these insights used to guide instructions and revision of work can be a powerful influence on learning and achievement. Well, number 5, the last one is assessments that are valid, reliable, and fair. So it should be to be a valid for any purpose. An assessment should be represent well to the knowledge and skill in its and skill intends to measure, be used for appropriately for intended purpose, and have positive consequences for instructions and for test takers, guiding better decisions rather than restricting opportunities. It should also scores that are related to the abilities that are meant to be predict. Assessments are well designed and valid for each intended use. Assessment are should be unbiased and fairly measures the knowledge and skills of the students from different language, culture, income background, and as well as students with learning difficulties. So assessment measures should, students learn accurately along with the continuum of achievement consistent with the purpose the assessments are intended to serve. So based on these 5 criteria, we can set a quality assessment for higher education. Over to you, Fauzia ma'am, if you want to conclude.
Okay, so any questions from anyone?
So are there any questions which you would want to ask on this presentation, which was on assessment and benchmarking of quality in higher education? Please feel free to ask questions, and then I would want some clarifications as well, Fauzia.
Sorry, ma'am, can you repeat?
I'm just saying that anybody who wants to ask questions on the presentation, please ask questions, because later on even I want certain clarifications.
Yeah, ma'am.
All right.
It's me, ANB. One of the speakers was little apprehensive about the old people. She said that it is the young people who can do wonders. Actually, in education, the maturity, the experience of old timers is a great asset. Yes, youngsters are good in the IT part, but the elders also, they are getting hold of it. But the maturity and experience, in education, there is no, we call it STD, serving till death. If you go to foreign universities, there are hardly any vacancies, because until unless the renowned professor dies, his position is, not vacant. So it is not true that youngsters only can do it. Yes, they have the energy. They can, give impotence lot of support, but actual thinking and all comes with experience, where the elders might be contributing equally or a little more. That's what I wanted to say.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Any other questions? Are there any other questions on the presentation? Or any clarifications or any comments or observations?
Ma'am?
Yes, Mansa,
I don't have any question, but I have a kind of comment on the presentation. Thank you, Group 2. But actually, we were supposed to discuss on the criteria and benchmarks used by the accreditation councils in India with respect to higher education. So I thought that part was missing, like the criteria used by NAAC for accrediting the different higher education institutions in India. What are the criteria especially they use? So I didn't see that part in your presentation. So
yes, Manasa, I also felt that they were giving the theoretical aspects of assessment, what should be done, but what is being done by the assessing agencies in India, if they could jot down some points stepwise, that would have been more beneficial. That's all.
I think
actually,
Yes.
Mansa,
Before,
actually,
before
yeah, that
Fazia,
is topic 4.
Fazia, 1 minute. There
Yes,
is
ma'am.
a certain kind of a, uh, confusion here in this entire presentation. And who is the, out of the group, who would like to answer what I'm going to ask? Will you do, or Shagota will do, or Seema? Which member do you think has been the leader in discussing, or who wants to voluntarily answer a few questions which I'm going to ask? Will you be answering, Fauziya? Should I ask you, or would you want somebody else to make a answer or respond? Who wants to respond out of the group? I have a few clarifications.
Yes, ma'am. Surely, even I can answer, and my group members are also there. If they want to answer, they can also come ahead. There is not an issue.
Okay. Okay. So there is a overlap and there is a confusion. I think the at least two observations have come. Anil
Yes, ma'am.
started that point, which to my mind continued while you were making the presentation, and now Mansa has also come up with it along
Yes.
with Dr. Bhattacharjee.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
want to know from you. I mean, you put in a lot of hard work in the presentations, in the slides, but I want
Yes,
to
ma'am.
find out that what exactly you had in mind. I mean, what was the concept with which you have made a presentation? Can you just answer in
Yes.
about 3 to 4 minutes? What was in your mind and what is the presentation all about?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, what Mansa told that about NAC and what we need, that is actually topic 4. What we needed to speak was about quality assessment and only the benchmarks and criteria. About that, about in the what Indian contest says, that was actually the topic 4, which was the next topic, which was evaluating and going into deep detail. So what we did was we spoke about quality assessment and its benchmark and criteria in detail, and we gave it up to that, ma'am. So I guess the next group which will present will talk about that.
So, Mansa, you want to ask, are you satisfied with that reply? Because otherwise, I'll ask a few
Yes, ma'am.
questions.
I'll just add. So, yeah. So, I think there is a confusion here, Fauzia. So, topic 4 is about critically evaluating the existing systems, like what are the drawbacks or what are the drawbacks or advantages or disadvantages of the present existing accreditation systems and assessment councils. So, I think you should have been including about the criteria used by the present existing systems for evaluating higher education institutions. According to me, I think ma'am has to clear
Okay.
this.
Yeah, Fazia,
Okay.
any comments to what she is saying, to what Mansa is saying?
Okay, actually, ma'am, as far as my and my group members discussed, so these were the topics even I was told about, and we discussed on this only. So, as Shagufta ma'am also told in the chat that what Mansa is speaking is about topic 4, which will be the next topic, and as far I don't know about it, so that we should have included or not. I would like that if any of my group member knows about it, so they can come in front and say it.
Hello.
Yes, yes,
Hello. I'm Pavisha.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, our topic was about criteria and benchmarks for quality assessment only. So I think quality assessment introduction I gave as meaning for quality assessment, cycle, and then I went how it is important in higher education. So others continued for benchmarks and all that. So I think it's relevant to our topic only. So we choose that only. And that was topic 4, no? What they are expecting, I think so.
Yeah, Pavitra, that's fine. But if you could have taken a live example of benchmarking by a higher institute, there are so many case studies available. So in that case, we come to know exclusively our field, that is higher education. So, some live examples, they always give you more insight than, just theoretical points. But on the whole, you all have worked hard, no problem. A little deviation from the core topics.
Okay, sir. So others, you are
Okay.
group 2?
Okay.
Others,
If
you want to say?
anybody else, sorry, what are you saying, Pavitra?
Hello. Yes,
Yeah, if
ma'am.
anyone wants to say from group 2?
I just have a few comments on presentation. There is no doubt that a lot of work has gone into the presentation, but in my mind, there have been conceptual confusions at many places, First of all, when we are talking about benchmarking and assessment, we are actually talking about the criteria. We are talking about the standards through which we will assess the system of higher education. Assess for what purpose? For ascertaining whether there is quality in it or not. Okay. You started actually with assessment of the students learning. The overlap and the confusion started right there. After all, assessing students is only one part of quality assessment. When we are talking about quality assessment, we are talking about many things. We are talking, if you recall, Manisha's presentation with Dr. Pranay Prashar, she had brought about the various dimensions of quality in education, which need to be looked at very critically and which need to be assessed when we are talking about quality. There was a talk about, let's say, the infrastructure, the pedagogical practices, the assessment and evaluation of learners, and also the outcomes of the graduate attribute outcomes, which Pranay had talked about before that. So looking at the benchmarks for quality, we look at the entire process of education, which encompasses many things, So benchmarks are given to each of those criteria, which education, first of all, understand what is education. Here we are talking about mainly about teaching and learning, but teaching and learning has to be facilitated by n number of factors. Infrastructure comes as one factor. The qualification of teachers comes as another factor. The pedagogic principles comes as third factor. The fourth factor could be about the availability of resources, library, laboratory, which also can be actually clubbed at the infrastructure level. Then assessment and evaluation, what kind of pedagogy is being followed, what kind of assessment is being done, and finally about the placements and so on. So we are looking at education, primarily heart of education is about the teaching learning, but teaching learning has to be facilitated, has to be supported by n number of things. So for these things, n number of things plus teaching and learning, what are the benchmarks? What are the standards? What are the criteria that needed to be talked about? To my mind, you started with assessment of learners. Assessment of learners cannot be seen in isolation. And from then you went on onwards and went further. So, and secondly, many a times I have said this before, I feel that whatever is put in the PowerPoint should be in your language. I mean, you went ahead and did a lot of research and you picked up things and all, but it wasn't looking like as if it was related to education, because isolated, things were put. It had to be linked all the time. There had to be linkages. Even when you are quoting somebody from abroad, from some one person was quoted, I mean, that has to fall in line with the framework that you have set. So to my mind, what was missing was the framework. The framework was not there, because we have to understand quality. We have to understand whose quality are we talking about. We have to understand the process of education. What does it mean? Primarily, where is the focus? And from there, what is it that is at the periphery, at the outer orbit, and for each of these things, what are the benchmarks which need to be kept in mind if an assessment has to be done. Okay, so that is a criticism of the presentation. Otherwise, I think you have put in a lot of work, but actually, why do we need to just, not even write in our own language? Why? It's not about, the presentation is all about what is going on in your mind and your own understanding. So that was the shortcoming, If anybody else wants to say, or if the group agrees or disagrees with what I have said, please come up with your disagreements. We can actually discuss that also, so that we are on the same page, as far as this particular topic is concerned.
Hello, ma'am. Hello?
Yeah, sure. Yes, Shagufta. Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. We have done a lot of mistake, I guess so, but we have done a good work also. We will try to take all these points and consider all this, and next time we will put up a very good, compiled presentation, a good framework of presentation, ma'am. Since many of, even last class also I didn't join. I don't know what happened in the last class also. So some of the health issues has also occurred in the group members, so which was a major reason would have been for not putting up in a good framework. We will take all the points and we will do it better in the next time, ma'am.
Great.
So it's very reassuring to hear from you, Shagufta, but I hope I have made my point clear. All I want is that when we are taking any topic for presentation, first of all, we need to, the framework, the presentations and all were absolutely fantastic. No, criticism on that point. My only point is that our own understanding should come out very clearly. The framework is with regard to what we understand about benchmarks, what do we understand about assessment of quality. That is where I say that understanding about assessment of quality in education was not consistent, did not come forth and all. So next time, at least you need to debate amongst yourself and find out a common understanding of assessment and take forward from there. It's all about actually understanding and then going forward with the presentation. That's all I wanted to say. So, Dr.
Yes,
Bhattacharya,
ma'am.
is there anything you want to say now?
Yes. Yes, Shagufta, you wanted to tell something?
Yes, so basically, since we are in a lockdown period, we can't able to search for some standardized books. If the people, you all are from the education background, if you could refer to some of the books which has, in detail about this quality education, because various people are searching in net, various sites, and they come up with different points. And to sitting that and putting up in a framework, if there is some books we can follow, if you all can suggest that, it will be a better thing for us.
Sure, Shagufta. If I come across anything, I will put it in the group. Don't worry.
Where all these points can come up with an sequence simultaneously, when all these points can come up, like how, what, and all the things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No problem. I'll do that.
We are here to learn. So whatever maybe the things we have done wrong, we are here to learn. We will rectify it. That only, we are here to learn.
Sure.
Yeah, Shagufta, that's a very good approach. And there is nothing wrong in whatever anybody does. It's only a question of putting things in a right framework and things in a perspective. We are all going through it for the first time. I do understand all of you come from different backgrounds. Education is not your subject. Even people from education may not have a good understanding. So that's not the point. Nothing is wrong. Do not feel this thing that we did wrong. I was just trying to put things in a perspective. Okay. Now Pavitra is saying that our topic was criteria and benchmarks for quality assessment only. Yes, okay, fine. Even if it was, then the criteria and benchmarks, like I said, and Shagufta, you are mentioning that there are no books available. if you recall, I was saying again, this presentation was made by the group where Dr. Pranay Prashar and I think Manisha's presentation, I very clearly remember, had about 3-4 things, you know. She had talked about infrastructure. In fact, Manisha is there, so why don't I ask her only? Manisha, your part of the presentation had infrastructure, teaching learning process, resources, so on and so forth. Will you just recall that and make a presentation of that in 5 minutes, because we are taking the discussion forward from that point. Manisha?
Hello, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Manisha, do you remember that
morning,
transparent, that PowerPoint slide of yours? You were a part of Dr. Prashar's group, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I want you to talk about those 6-7 things which you had put up in boxes. Remember the
yes
infrastructure? Yeah. Please, can you just recall that, and will you just bring that out once again?
Ma'am, all the points or any particular point?
No, that particular one slide in which you had talked about infrastructure, you had talked about the teachers, the teaching learning process and all. I still remember there were little boxes below, and there was something, the boxes were coming one after another. There were 5-6 points over there. Only those 5-6 points I want you to mention.
Okay, ma'am. So in my slide, I was talking about the parameters which we consider while checking the quality of any institution or university or the overall higher education level. First, I was talked about infrastructure. In infrastructure, if a college or university has a physical space in accordance with the subjects they offered, or in accordance with the strength of their staff and students, if that space is good, or if that space includes all the necessities, if they have labs for experiments, labs to promote research work, and they have a library with all the necessary books relevant for staffs and students. Library also have journals, e-journals, like in current situation we have option of InflibNet. So if all these facilities are there in the infrastructure of any college or any institution of higher education, then we consider that, okay, this particular college or institution is in good infrastructure situation. So this was the first part. Next,
Manisha, 1 minute. So Shagufta, Fauzia and Pavitra, the first point which Manisha has mentioned becomes the benchmark. What is the benchmark? In infrastructure, adequate resources or libraries which are well equipped with books and e-resources and so on and so forth, classrooms which can accommodate all students, labs and so on. So infrastructure, the benchmark is that it should be what she's saying. That is what you have to bring out. Okay, let us now listen to the next one which Manisha will talk about. So that is how each one is a benchmark, because these are all important things for teaching learning process. If the students have to read well, if the teachers have to equip themselves well with resources, then a provision for a library, provision for a laboratory, adequate classrooms and all that become very important. So that is the benchmark. Adequate, good quality and so on and so forth. I'll come to, towards the end, I'll show you how the connection is between quality assessment and these ones. Yes, Manisha, go on to the next point now.
Okay, ma'am. Next point, I was talked about faculty of college or institution, higher education institution. So if we consider about the quality of a faculty, in this case, we considered that the faculty must have cleared or must have minimum qualification. Like in higher education, we consider that a person NET, assistant professor. So that will be your minimum eligibility. Next, if we go on further, we see that that particular person or faculty must involve in initiatives or research work. They should work not only in relation to the students, but along with that, they must take initiatives in the field of research work and innovation work and continuously improve their skills, so that they can help students to learn better, to learn in a better way. So this is a faculty part. Am I right, ma'am?
Yeah, absolutely. See, now what happens is the second criteria becomes the faculty. What are the benchmarks for assessing whether the faculty is up to the mark? A, they should have the minimum qualifications which have been prescribed, including the NET and so on. And secondly, they should have a system of continuously upgrading their knowledge and their capabilities. Okay, so when we assess the quality against the criteria of faculty, quality of the faculty, we will see whether they have minimum qualifications, they have cleared NET, they have PhDs, there is a system of continuous renewal of their knowledge and competencies and so on. So this is how infrastructure, faculty, and these are the criteria. But benchmarks are recruitment as per UGC qualification, PhDs, so on and so forth. So this is how it becomes like that. Are you people able to understand? Pavitra, are you able to understand what Manisha said?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so this is what was to be done. Let Manisha quickly finish now.
Next, I was talked about the quality of students. Quality of students here means the evaluation of performance of the students. We see that the performance of students in examinations will be considered as a quality benchmark for students. But if we see the quality in respect of students, we see the overall performance in academics and in extracurricular activities, as in what they achieved in their academic qualification and what they achieved in a non-academic way. So this is the students part. Next was research and innovation. Here we not stick to just faculty part. We saw the research and innovation work of the organization of the institution of higher education as a whole. What institution is doing to promote the research culture in their campus, what is how they are promoting or how they are encouraging their faculty members to involve in research work, what particular awards they received, and on which innovation projects they are working, and which innovation projects they completed. So this is the research and innovation part. Next, I was talked about the inclusion of ICT, information and communication technology, in higher education. So we have now, as I said, we have now InflibNet, in which various e-books and e-journals are involved. So organizations, sorry, I am using organization, the institutions of higher education must involve the technology factor in their campus, like not only in studies, like in, if see in a management system, in office of a college, they are using a particular softwares for doing their recording work, for doing their accounts work, or teachers are doing assessment work in particular software, or assess books or journals through e-resources. So these are the factors which should be included as technology in the campus. And next, I talked about the placement of students. So if we consider if we saw the quality of higher education as a whole, we see that how much effort should taken by an institution to finally place students on a job. So how many drives they organized, placement drives they organized for students, what type of companies with what status they have covered. So that part I've included. Next part was academics and examination. Examination pattern, the quality of examination pattern should be like it should encourage students to think more, not to think more out of the box, or answered according to their thinking. How we can promote the creative thinking of a student. To examination pattern or the academics pattern should be like that. The quality of examination should be assessed on the basis of the questions asked in the examination, the regularity of conducting the examination, and on-time declaration of results. So this was the examination part. Next was alumni. Alumni connections, or how alumni network an institution is creating, how alumni supporting their institutions, and contributing in the overall development of the institution. So this I was talked. And I think last part was best practices. In that I was talked about the social responsibility of an institution, how an institution involve their students, their staff members in social service work, like they have women development cell, equal opportunity cell, or national service scheme. How these cells are approaching or touching the sensitive issues of the society. So all these parts I have covered.
Okay, so thank you, Manisha, for that. Shagufta, Fauzia, Pavitra, and the others in the group, is it clear what Manisha has presented? See, the point is, and this presentation is important. This part is important because while she was talking about it, one could get an idea about the system of higher education. When we talk about higher education, we need to visualize what does it mean. Apart from the fact that a teacher is teaching in the classroom, there are a whole lot of supportive things which go around that. Teaching learning becomes successful because there are classrooms available for everybody. There are laboratories, there are libraries, there are automated systems, journals which are up to date so that the faculty can read and therefore keep themselves updated to teach with the latest understanding in the classroom. So what needed to be done was that benchmarks or assessment, one had to talk about these things, 6-7 factors she's talked about. In their group, I remember that Dr. Parashar had introduced the concept of graduate attributes. Ultimately, if we have the graduate or the students in terms of their learning outcomes have acquired those attributes which they were supposed to, then we can say that this is a quality institution. At least these objectives have been met. So this is how assessment is done. Therefore, I think there was a little bit of a confusion there about what was expected and what has been presented. Like I said, that it's not a question about being wrong or right. Sometimes there are things which need to be clarified further. Our understandings also need to be reinforced. We need to also understand, and that happens only through a discussion. So never mind, whatever it was, I hope things are now clearer as compared to what they were initially. Anybody else wants to say or add anything to it, we can do that. Otherwise, I think we should move to the next group 4.
Madam, this is Dr. Parashar. Can I add?
Yes,
Hello?
please. Yes, Pranay, please go ahead.
The only thing, a lot of things in terms of the external cosmetics thing, like the classroom, air conditioned seminar hall, the building and everything, that can be managed, that can be done. But ultimately it should essentially result in graduate attributes. And there is a whole discussion around outcome-based education and designing of program outcomes, program specific outcomes, learning outcomes, and how do you go about assessing and attaining those outcomes, and how do you improve on them. So today quality is in terms of that. So that needs to be the mainstay, and everything is built around the graduate attributes. So that is in the center of all the planning and all the execution activities.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I think what was being talked about, I was talking about the teaching learning being at the center. We will talk about the graduate attributes. We will also talk about the outcome-based thing. There are certain criticisms with regard to outcome-based learning. I think we need to be aware of that also, but there's no difference in opinion that the heart of any educational institution remains the teaching and learning process, and everything is geared to support the teaching learning process. So we were just talking about the presentation of the group 3, which seems to have missed the criteria assessment. You know, I think they focused more on the learner assessment, so there was some confusion which led to this debate about which are the criteria, what needs to be looked at, what is the benchmarking. First of all, identify the criteria around teaching learning process, and then assign the benchmarks. So that's how it kind of proceeded. But yeah, absolutely, the teaching learning and outcome based, yes, I will talk about that. I'll be talking in the next session. Yeah, Anil.
Yeah. So actually, what was missing in that presentation, actually, they were not getting the understanding of the assessment process. Actually, the standard should be had. The criteria already is set by the NAAC. Everything is there. So they were supposed to start on that, and the criteria is broadly grouped into in 7 groups. One is the curricular aspect, then teaching, learning and evaluation, then research, innovation and extension, and then infrastructure and learning resources, student support and progression, and governance, leadership and management, and last one is the institutional values and best practices. So these are the it has been set by the NAAC. So we are not going to put anything new, but we were supposed to talk in that way only, nothing else. So this is my point.
Yeah, all right, Anil. Yes, I think now the point is amply clear to them. I'm sure it is. And the last group, the group 4, will make a presentation on NAAC specifically, and also a critique of how NAAC goes about. You know, there is a criticism regarding the criteria set out by NAAC. Also, the weightage that they have given to qualitative and quantitative aspects, and whether they are actually able to capture the process within the framework they have set. You know, that is also to be debated. So the group 4, please make your presentation. Who are the ones who are in group 4?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I was in group 4, but we didn't कोई भी अभी ऐसे prepare नहीं कर पाया.
तो आपने कुछ किया है क्या prepare? Will you like to speak something?
No, ma'am. I.
So there is nobody who is going to talk about NAAC and the criticism of NAAC and all that. No? Okay. So basically, I think then probably it is time also to conclude the discussion on quality and quality assessment. And are there any comments before I actually get on to winding this bit? Are there any observations or comments? Because I'll kind of take them along with the, my this thing, my winding up of this debate.
Ma'am, I had made a presentation regarding the pitfalls of NAC and the corrective measures taken and the future assessment techniques. But
Okay.
I had emailed it in the group, but it seems people have not received it. I get a
Okay.
message that you're blocked in this group. I don't know why. So I have I have sent a mail to Love to look into it. Probably he'll be able to sort out the issue. If you want, I can just give the gist.
Yeah, please do that. Yes, go ahead and do that, please. That will be good.
Okay. So, basic framework or core values, this is all already told about as to how NAC carries out the assessment. They have a framework and they strictly follow it. But initially, when NAC came out with their framework, it was, there was a lot of criticism because probably people felt that it was not a perfect evaluation. Now, just a minute. Initial pitfalls, NAC enjoyed the main points of the initial pitfalls and for which the criticism came up, that many substandard institutions got NAC accreditations. Like they were not, fully of that level which is envisaged, but they got the accreditation. So there was some element of subjective evaluation, which is always dangerous, your own personal views of the assessors and all. So that element was perhaps in a higher percentage. Then NAC was enjoying the status of both an investigation agency and judge. There was no agency to assess NAC. Now, if NAC people are doing the job correctly or not, who would assess? That was a question. In some cases, hegemonial attitudes prevailed over the autonomy of private institutions. Because, they had a set of rules and it's, in some cases, it did impinge upon the autonomy of private institutes. Then shortage of assessors to cover an ever-growing expansion in institutions. Now there was no proper balancing program outcomes with the objectives of the institution, which we call POE. Local objectives and internal objectives were not properly balanced. Probably it still remains. So NAC was good to bring in corrections. So in 2017, they brought out some corrections where only 20% weightage was given to peer group assessment. This is already implemented. Students' feedback taken into account by the SSS scheme, that is Student Satisfaction Survey. Now, what is being contemplated to further improve the assessment system? Since it is a very elaborate process, and if you go to assess so many institutions in India, it will take years. So the planners are thinking of multiple assessment agencies in, they are going to involve many agencies other than NAC and NBA to speed up the process of accreditations. Now, even they are thinking of involving some foreign assessors like CRISIL in addition to our national agencies, and developing a large force of assessors is also being contemplated. Now, A lot of things have yet to be done on the open and distance learning for the open and distance learning. These are all, future plans. They are also thinking of giving university status to well-acclaimed, prestigious and good quality institutes like, colleges like St. Stephen's, Loyola, etc. They might be given university status. Then they expect that state government to form their own accreditation agencies. University should be in a position to accredit the colleges affiliated to them. Now, one aspect which we have not discussed at all is the GATS, what you call General Agreement on Trades and Services. This is a modified version of WTO, where the multinationals have got their own aspirations, and we in our local institutes must be having their local issues to be addressed. So now it needs to be balanced. Treating education as a tradable commodity may affect our social and cultural fabric. Now, my question or a point of discussion, as I was trying to think, that is it necessary to go after international standards? Because these standards in whole may not be very workable for many of our institutes, especially in the rural areas. So can we have a sort of double assessment, different mode of assessment where, some institutes do go for international standards and some just, go for supporting their local environment, because the main objective is to train the students for employment. Now, it's very difficult for the rural institutions to go to that level as is envisaged, international standards, but progressively, yes. So in that case, some brainstorming can be done. This is what I have mentioned in my presentation. So
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bhattacharjee. I also would like Anil to say, or maybe Pranay or some of you who've been on the NAC teams, to share your experiences over here in a critical manner. We know that there is a National Assessment and Accreditation Council, which actually the purpose of which is to regulate the standards and quality in higher education institutions. There is some after assessment, there are stars and all, grades and all are given, to institutions. And while it's a good thing that we have somebody to assess, there are also several criticisms. Some of them Dr. Bhattacharjee has mentioned, and I'm sure people who are in the teaching profession at a senior level, or who've had the chance to be on the teams of NAC for visits and so on, will have their own observations to talk about. So let us hear from them what they feel, the way NAC does, how assessment is done and so on. Do you agree with the practices? Do you agree with the kind of criteria they have come out with? What are the pitfalls? How can they be improved and so on? Pranay, would you like to speak about it?
Yeah, I was a part of this NAC peer team visit, and as well as this NBA in our NBA college last. So what I have seen is from that point of time when the visit actually happened and today, the system has changed. So basically what we did was there was an SSR which we would say develop, we would build, and we would like all rosy things there, all positive things, no negative things mentioned in there.
Okay, Pranay, I'm sorry to interrupt you here. Will you talk about the process itself?
No. I'm just.
How does the institute submit itself for accreditation? Okay, you talk about it so that the group gets an idea as to how the whole process is, and then we can talk about the criticism and the shortfalls.
Okay. So it all starts from a letter of intent. So and any institute sends a letter of intent to NAC or NBA that we want to go and get ourselves accredited. Accredited is a process wherein the NAC or NBA comes into your institute and they check you, and they'll give you some or the other grade A, B, C, D. Accreditation does not mean that you'll get A only or A plus or like that. Even if you get a B or a C, you are accredited. That's what it basically means, accredited. So there's somebody who has checked your processes. That's the meaning of accreditation. So you send your LOI to these bodies and then they revert to you stating, fine, we'll take it up. So and then they'll give you a timeline. So this is the timeline wherein you need to submit your SSR to us. You prepare your SSR. The 9 criterias are, I believe 7 criterias are there, if I'm not wrong. Different criteria which have been discussed at length. You can find them at the NAC website as well. So there's a detailed format. They have a set of questions there, and you need to write answers to these questions, bind them together, and then send it to NAC. This was the earlier process, wherein it was more of a theory kind of a question answer. So write about your process and things like that. So you simply write and write and write, and the whole 300 page, 250 page kind of a big thesis is prepared called SSR. Now this is submitted to the NAC body. They will take their own time in reading and assessing it, and then they will give you timelines as to say, we'll be visiting you in say 2 months hence, 2 or 3 months hence, depending upon their workload and their availability. And then they come down and then they actually kind of verify whatever you have furnished in the SSR, whether it is correct or not. And then based on that, you can understand there is some level of subjectivity here. The peer team comes in and then they check the documentation and the evidence that you have with you. And based on that and their interaction with the management and other stakeholders, they will have a series of meetings with, say, alumni, the companies who have visited the college or who have taken the students of the college in their given jobs, interaction with the teachers, interaction with the non-teaching staff, interaction with the management body of the institute. So they will interact with all of these in a very secluded environment, and they will try and engage. And these people are very senior people, people with a lot of experience coming from IITs, and they know actually the nitty-gritties of functioning of a college and how things are where. So they are good people to work with, so they know how to get things out. But the internal part of the institute, say the non-teaching staff or the teachers, they are by default, say, because tied to the institute, so they will speak all rosy goody things. And the NAC managers, say people like us, we would say have our interaction with the parents, our interaction with the alumni, our interaction with the corporates, and then we'll try and say modify their views as well, and things can be influenced. So that possibility is there. The good thing which has happened now is they have shifted to a different platform, I believe since 2017, as rightly said by Karunanath sir. And this time it has become more of a numerical oriented question answer. The SSR, which was earlier a theoretical kind of a thing, has now become a numerical kind of a thing, wherein they need numbers for everything. So whatever you are submitting, whatever you are writing, there is a quantifiable number to it on most occasions, and it is very easy to gauge, say, find evidences. The percentage of peer visit scores has also been reduced. So what happens is when you submit this SSR now with all those numbers, they randomly ask for evidences to be submitted real time. Say there is an IQAC in charge who is say looking at, say listening with the NAC committee. So they will say we need a document for question number 3 of criteria 2. So that is just a random number. So you need to be, and they'll give you a day's time at best. So say maximum tomorrow evening, you need to be able to furnish the data and submit it. So that it basically say takes out all the say manipulations and all the misdoings that you were able to do earlier, because now you will be submitting SSR only when you have all the data in place. So as soon as the mail comes in that we need such and such proof of so and so question, you need to send it right away. So a lot of things have improved in that sense. My experience with the NAC committee has been really well. These people come in and they give you a lot of positive feedback. They'll give you a lot of ideas as to how your alumni can contribute to the college, how the corporates can contribute to the college, uh, parents can contribute to the college, and how the colleges can say make to them, use them more efficiently. So it's a mix of both. Earlier it was very bad, as rightly said, but things are improving. This document verification has been outsourced, so there's a third party, private party. We don't know who gets this data, and peer team has got a very minimal role, minimal impact on the overall assessment. So I think that's from my side.
Right, Pranay, that was a good elaboration of the process in which this assessment takes place, how the institution submits itself for assessment. I think what has changed is that they have brought in a lot of objectivity into the process now.
Right.
70% of it is objective, 30% is subjective. So the idea is that the people who are on the committee should not get swayed because of their subjectivity. So 70% objective thing is assigned to a third party, which kind of, needs to go through the software or the criteria that they have fixed in order to arrive at some kind of a grading and so on, score and all. And then the subjectivity, where the 30% of the assessment team's prowess lies, they actually visit the institution and they check for themselves, to satisfy themselves on the basis of the claims and so on, which have been made in the SSR. So, Anil, is there anything you would? I wanted a critique actually. I want to hear as to what is it which is lacking? What is it which is not so good with the NAC assessment criteria also? We know that they have identified 7 or 8 benchmarks and there are details, and there is still a lot to be written actually in those columns. But I was looking for are people satisfied? Do you think that this is the right way to go about assessment? What happens given the fact that we are a very heterogeneous country? There are institutions and nature of institutions is very different, and there are no level playing fields, as far as institutions are concerned, even within the public institutions. So how does one look at
I had a philosophical take on that. Last time when we were preparing the presentation, I shared this with my team. I have a philosophical take on this. So you are comparing, say, an IIM Ahmedabad with any XYZ rural, say again a management college, and you have got the same parameters. If I'm Ahmedabad is A, there's no way in which this rural center could possibly be A. But India is a country, or say any country for that matter, has got all kinds of people. So there are very good analytical people. There are people who are slow learners. So I know this mechanism. My youngest brother is in Singapore, and his 6-year-old kid, he goes to the school, and they have got sections there, sections in terms of slow learners, fast learners, and average learners. I was puzzled. I was surprised. How can this happen at such a small level? But it's very critical, and we don't have any mechanism like this. This basic concept of slow learners, fast learners, in India, I haven't come across. I really haven't come across. So all fast learners would go to, say, for example, eventually IITs and IIMs or AIMS, and all the slow learners would be somewhere down doing triple IITs or some ITI courses or something like that. I'm lost on that. But you compare all of these using the same framework. So NAC is a framework, and everybody goes through the same process, and you get an A and you get a B. Even though you are doing a very good job, and I am from a mediocre college, and all my students are, say, being reasonably placed based on their abilities, and I'm happy about that, but I'm not very happy because I don't get a good NAC grade. So that was my...
Okay.
Yeah.
Pranay, there is a comment which I would like to make here. While you do talk about the Singapore system, in Delhi also, Delhi government also has now segregated people according to their abilities and so on, but there is also a criticism of this kind of segregation of labeling people. While within the mainstream classroom, within a classroom which is inclusive, because we talk about inclusion as well, we have talked about it, not very directly, but obliquely. The labeling creates a problem, but the fact of the matter is that the teacher has to be aware of the strong and weak points of the learners and give the inputs accordingly. So that's the point of debate, whether you should segregate or have them all together. Delhi government faced a lot of flack for actually segregating people. They had classes where, Nishtha and I just remember one name at the moment, but there was a criticism. In the literature of education also, you will find that sometimes remember we used to have special schools for children with special issues, special needs, but now they are all being mainstreamed because that kind of a segregation can create problems for the learners also in their ways of perceiving themselves as not being good enough as others, so that is another point. Now
the way I look at it, to run an organization, you need one CEO, several managers, several junior managers, and then you need the shop floor workers as well. Everybody cannot be the CEO, or everybody cannot be at the shop floor. That's the reality of life. So I think, yes, I agree with you when you say it creates its own problem when you label people. I agree to that. But then that's the reality. When the people have their own pace of learning, somebody would take time, somebody would be a real good learner, even he would take out. And if you put all of these people in the same class, somebody has to suffer.
Okay, so we can actually have this debate go, but let me just one thing which I have to say with regard to this, and that will be my last point, is this that, when we are talking, I absolutely agree with you that everybody does not have the same aptitude and so on. But my point also, this is something which we discussed in the initial presentations and meetings and sessions. It was about the fact of being denied an opportunity for education, which doesn't happen only in my generation, but which might have happened in my parental generation. So the fact that the system does not give me an opportunity to educate myself, that system cannot also put a label. Labels can only be put after equal opportunities have been given. So that is the point which is talked about, that having given an opportunity and having created a level playing field, if I'm not able to do well, then of course my aptitude lies elsewhere, but not in higher education. But having not being denied an opportunity and being labeled as something which is unfair, that is unequal, that results in inequality. Here I would just like to mention one small example. I don't know, many of you must have also gone through this and must have read it, that about we had a news item where there were two children of a daily wage worker who made it to the IIT. And many of you are also familiar with the Super 30 club, which is run by this person in Bihar, where he picks up actually persons from those backgrounds which have not had access to education. Their parents, their social economic status and so on and so forth does not permit them to excel in education in the main educational institution. So he picks them from there and works on them, and the results, I believe there is also a film which has been made on that. So basically I was talking about the fact that this debate goes a little deeper, and I think we need to be a little more in touch with that. Now, if there is nothing coming up, I think I'll make the announcement for the next session, but I find Dr. Bhattacharji's mic is on. He has left the meeting. All right. So any suggestions regarding how we should go about it? See, my plan for the next meeting is that I want to wind up this issue on quality. I would not repeat what all of you have already presented, but there are certain points which I want to bring to your notice for actually thinking hard on topics which might have got omitted when we treat the topic in a very general way. So please actually, I want you to keep those in mind, because my aim is also to have some kind of a critical discussion on these topics. I'll do that, but then there is a topic coming up. I was thinking of globalization, but I'm also thinking of doing the last block, which is on teachers associations and so on. And for that, I was thinking in terms of having a role play, because this group presentation then can be taken up later on. We just have about 2 or 3 topics from the first course left. So what do you suggest, that should we do a role play on teachers associations, or go about it in the manner that we have so far, which is making a presentation in groups, taking separate parts and making presentation on each of the parts? What do you say? You can put yes or your suggestions in the chat box also. So can you just let me know, because then accordingly I'll fix the topic and I can actually put it up on the Google groups also. Part of the topic we can start on Friday. If you want to do a role play, which will be very different from the group presentations which have been made so far, then the topic should lend itself to role play. And I had in mind the bit which is like the 4th block, which is on teachers associations and so on. Then I'll give you the topic so that you can have 3 groups and we can have a role play on that topic. But in case you feel comfortable with the presentation going on, the way it has been going on, which is that groups take up one aspect of the topic from the topic, then one would rather go with globalization, because these two lend themselves to different treatment. So what is your suggestion? Wait, what is the suggestion? Why is everybody so silent? Do you think role play is a better idea? Do you want to try a new technique? Do you want to go with the same one which is going on so far? What is it?
Ma'am, role play is a interesting option, ma'am, but it's difficult to coordinate. How do we do it?
But what are we going to do in role play? Like, I'm still confused. Like, what kind of role play are we focusing on?
See, we can have actually 3 or 4 people, like the way we have been making the groups.
Okay.
Normally you have 4 to 5 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I give you an example, if I were to do a teachers organization or association, then one can, in the 4 to 5 people, we can have one person becoming the principal, or 2 people, becoming the members from the management. We can have 3 people who would be representing the association in that particular institution. They will be talking about their demands. They will be talking about that. Though that part, I will kind of put it up on Google Doc. If you people give me a nod for role play, so one group can then talk about the demands. The other can talk about let's say about a professional ethics, code of ethics, the management, and they can negotiate on what the code of ethics should contain. And the third group can similarly do another aspect. So coordination would be that first you talk amongst yourselves and you say that this is the topic, like what I was talking about, the framework. And in this, we need to have these points. So 3 people, somebody like Love, who has that kind of, who can strike a hard negotiation with the members. Others can become members from the association. They will be talking about their problems. Management people will try to persuade them that these are not to be done like this, or they can come to some kind of a consensus. For that, you will have to read the units also. I will also be giving you the points on the Google groups. So I think it's not that difficult to coordinate, because it will be the same kind of coordination which is happening for the PowerPoint presentation also. Do you think it's doable?
Yes.
Why not try it? Why not try it?
Will you take any random topics, or you're going to assign the topics?
I will give you the topics from the last block of the first course, which is on the teachers and their associations and the social progressive role of the teachers. I'll give you the topics. I'll give you the points for each of the groups.
Works for
And
me.
then-
I can go for it. Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, and then role play would be that you have to play the role of the
Okay,
manager.
yeah, understood,
You have to play the role of the teachers, teacher leaders in one group.
Sure.
The other can, similarly, we can think of the roles, and you people decide how you can. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right. So, what is the general feeling of the other members about it? Anil, Pranay, Shagufta, Fazia, Mansa, what do you think? Do you think role play is interesting enough, or are you comfortable with what is going on right now? Or would you even suggest something else, which I am pretty much open to taking?
Yes, ma'am. Role play is interesting.
Role play is fine. Anil, Pranay?
As what we are doing from so many days, we are presenting, so this will be something different.
Yeah, this will be something different, definitely. Anil, what do you say? Pranay, Pavitra, Mansa, are you okay?
Yes, ma'am. Role play is good.
Role play is good. All right. So I think basically we managed to make 4 groups, right? So let me come up with what each group will have to do. And I'll give you some of the points. You can also on your own add some more points, and then we can take up this topic. It will be basically on the teachers' organizations and their role, and also the social progressive role of the teachers. So basically, what are the different aspects of teachers apart from teaching in the classroom? What are the other things that they do in an institution? All right. So, and what is the importance and significance? A lot of people feel that, associations just waste a lot of time and so on and so forth. But we will discuss all these and other topics in the role play. Then I'll then choose this, and then I'll put it up on the Google Docs if it is agreeable to everybody. Fine?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All right. Okay then. And that's about it. On at 11 o'clock, then on Friday, I'll be summarizing the quality debate. I'll not take much time. Just within 10 to 15 minutes, I'll try to. There's a bit of a winding up to be done, but there are certain things which remain as open questions, which remain as debatable points, which need to be thought about in greater details. So I'll leave you with those questions and my opinions on that. And then we can have maybe 2 groups doing the role play on coming Friday, and the next 2 can then take up from there and finish their presentations on Tuesday. That is a week from now. All right. In the meantime, I'll be writing out what has to be taken up by each of them on the group. And please take Dr. Mehto into the group as well. I'm not sure whether he's on the WhatsApp group or not, but please keep him in because he seemed a little disturbed at being excluded.
Okay.
All right?
No problem.
All right then. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody. And we'll be meeting at 11 o'clock on Friday with this new form of, expressing ourselves and putting our points, which is the role play. If there are confusions, if there is anything to be asked, please do not hesitate on the Google groups and I'll be responding to your queries regarding it. All right? Okay then. Bye-bye. Bye. And
Bye.
see you.
Thank you.
Bye.